Welcome to the 11th conference of this self-knowledge course. Today we will see this interesting subject, in which we are going to understand what the soul and the spirit are, since they are concepts that are commonly confused with each other. We are going to see how they are formed, what state they are currently in, and what are the steps to develop our soul and our spirit. Let's see first. What is the soul? The soul is a set of virtues, powers, faculties, forces, etc. that each one of us has latent in our presently contaminated essence. We may think we have a soul. But if we reflect that the soul is a set of virtues, forces, powers, and faculties, and at the same time, we observe ourselves, we will see that we do not have them. And instead, we have many psychological defects, many negative ways of being, that keep us in a state of spiritual misery, weakness, lack of self-control, and ignorance, being constantly dominated by pain, sadness, fear, etc. We will realize that we really don't have a soul. And that is the reason why, as human beings, we are capable of cruel atrocities, and damages against others, against nature, and even against ourselves. But it is good to know that all those virtues, powers, forces, and faculties are latent in us. This means that we have the ability to possess our soul, to be the owners of those virtues, powers, forces, and faculties. But for this, we must do an internal work, rescuing our essence, that is currently trapped and conditioned by all our negative ways of being. And what are those virtues, powers, faculties, and forces that we will obtain when developing our soul? Let's see. A virtue is the opposite to a defect. Once you understand one of your psychological defects and eliminate it by applying psychological death, that conditioning dies, and the conscious part that resided within the defect is released, which was the real, the true. Consequently, this goes from being a psychological defect that subjected, enslaved, and conditioned you to think, feel, speak, and act incorrectly, to the detriment of others and yourself, to now be a conscious virtue that understands, serves, and truly loves others as yourself. Every psychological defect that you eliminate will result in the birth of a virtue in you. For example, the defect of treason is transmuted into the virtue of fidelity, the thief self is transmuted into the virtue of honesty, anger into sweetness, lust into chastity, etc. But it is important to know that all defects have two poles: positive and negative, active and passive. And why do I make this clarification? Because many times, we have the tendency to believe ourselves to be good, to think that we do not have a defect because it is not manifesting in its active pole. And we deceive ourselves believing ourselves to be virtuous. But nevertheless, we react negatively, criticize, and judge those who have that defect in its active pole. And this is because we have that same defect in us, but we have it repressed, and it is manifesting from its other polarity as a dislike and a contempt for the defect. Hence the importance of observing the defects in both poles, understanding them, and eliminating them, to rescue the real virtues of the soul. Now let's talk about the powers. As the Kundalini rises in our spinal cord, creating each of our internal bodies, we begin to receive powers. When the solar physical body is created, we receive the power to govern the gnomes and pygmies, which are the elementals of earth. When the solar vital body is created, we receive the power to govern the undines and nereids of the water. When the solar astral body is created, we can travel in the astral body to any place or star, penetrate the fifth dimension whenever we want, and we also receive the power to govern the fire salamanders. When we create the solar mental body, we can enter the mental world whenever necessary, contact the sylphs and sylphids of the air, and receive all their wisdom. And we receive the power to govern all of nature, when the body of the solar will is created, which allows us to create even ourselves. Now, let's see the faculties. With the development of our soul, we will also develop faculties, as we develop our internal senses or chakras. Because in each of the initiation, we are granted faculties that are latent in all beings, but they do not know how to handle them. These faculties are clairvoyance, clairaudience, polarvoyance, magical hearing, presentiment, telepathy, telemetry, intuition, the faculty of communicating with the elementals of nature, etc. It is important to know that right now we are in a degenerate and fallen state, with multiple psychological defects that constantly control our psychology, because they have our consciousness trapped. Therefore, seeking the development of these faculties, without having previously done a work of liberation and development of our consciousness, would lead us to develop these faculties in a negative way, since it would be our different psychological defects who would use them, leading us to make many mistakes. For this reason, it must be our own inner being, who, as we progress in the elimination of our defects and in the creation of our internal bodies, gives us the management of each one of these faculties, which will develop in us. And as we develop our soul, we will also develop many forces, because as the psychic development occurs, all these forces are integrated around our being, and we will be able to do things that not even 1,000 men together would do. We will obtain physical strength, vitality, strength in the word, etc. When a person with strength in the word speaks, he can directly reach the consciousness of others. And we will also develop willpower. Within us resides a relatively great force, but we constantly abuse it, especially due to the defect of anger that makes us weak. And as I was saying, all this will develop and integrate in us, as we develop, or fabricate, our soul. Let's see now. How is the soul fabricated? The soul is fabricated by working on the three factors for the revolution of consciousness, which are psychological death, spiritual birth, and sacrifice for humanity. With psychological death, we save energy, balance our energy centers, and release the essence trapped in our defects. With the spiritual birth, we create the existential bodies of the being, in the sexual union of a man and a woman, making wise use of our sexual creative energy. And with the sacrifice for humanity, by giving others this knowledge in a disinterested way, we do the merits of the heart for advance in our inner work. These are the three factors that will help us get out of the mechanics of this world and revolutionize our consciousness, so that we can develop our soul. Now let's see what are the steps to fabricate the human soul. The first step is to receive the objective knowledge, because only when you know how to apply the three factors for the revolution of consciousness, is it possible to come to do this work. But as the old saying goes, out of 1,000 who seek me, only one finds me. And it is that, in the world there are many people who have a spiritual longing, and are looking for something spiritual, but few manage to find the knowledge of the three factors, focused on the practice, to start their own path towards the awakening of their consciousness. Many get entangled among so many concepts and theories that exist, and never come to recognize the knowledge that can lead them to advance spiritually. And why is this? This is due to karma. Many people have received the knowledge in past lives, but have abandoned it. Others have betrayed their Divine Mother. Others have committed crimes against the Holy Spirit. Others are seekers, but don't even know what they are looking for. And all of them have lost the right to receive it for several existences. So, it is a real privilege to receive and assimilate the objective knowledge in one existence, but that is only the first step towards the fabrication of our soul. The second step will be to start practicing those three factors, since they are useless as a theory, and what will radically transform us is that we put them into practice. But the reality is that very few decide to put this knowledge into practice. Most decide just to believe in it, and they get stuck at this level. Most of those who find the knowledge take it just as another theory, something intellectual, but do not put it into practice in their own lives. And this because of the defect of laziness, and due to their personality, that makes them go back to their old habits. But if you make a super effort, helping others, you receive a force that will drive you to truly undertake the work. That is why the saying goes, out of 1,000 who find me, one follows me. And the one who decide to follow the knowledge by practicing it, is the one that will take and fulfill the third step, which is to balance the energy centers by practicing the psychological death from moment to moment, to avoid the psychological defects from clumsily misuse the energy of the centers. Once you are working on balancing your centers, the fourth step will be to have a stable partner, so that you can start the work of transmuting your sexual energy. You must know that it is not possible to create the internal bodies without a partner, because outside of sex we cannot create anything. So, it is necessary to find a partner that is interested in this work, and who loves sexual practice. This work is very serious and requires continuity of purpose. We must also consider that it is not possible to create the bodies if we are castrated. So, to create the soul, it is necessary to have the sexual glands in perfect condition. Castration is a crime against the Holy Spirit, the Creator. A castrated person cannot create anything, he must first regenerate himself, if possible. The fifth step will be to turn the waters around, that is, to make the sexual energy go up through the spinal cord. To do this, we must stop fornicating, and always practice suprasexuality successfully, by not expelling the sexual energy through orgasm and ejaculation, and managing to make it ascend through our spine in every sexual practice. When we pass through this point of our own inner work, we see in the astral plane how the water, instead of going down, begins to rise. For example, we could see in the astral plane or world of dreams a waterfall, but instead of the water falling, it is rather going from the bottom up. And while we work on balancing our energy centers, and work to eliminate all the defects that do not allow us to achieve chastity, we will experience the process of purification our energy. The sixth step will be to receive the silver sword. We must understand that the work begins with chastity. It is necessary to understand the defect of fornication, so that we stop spilling our sexual energy. And if we do so, we will light the sacred fire of the Kundalini in our spine. So, it is necessary that we work on eliminating all the details of lust that lead us to fornication, as fornication impedes all progress. Once we have eliminated this psychological defect, the sacred fire will be ignited in us, and we will receive in the inner world a small silver sword with a white handle, which will be the sign that we have become initiates. That is, that we have already begun the work of ascending the fire vertebra by vertebra through the spinal cord. At the beginning it will be a very small sword, that will grow as we advance in our initiations. But each fornication makes us descend 2 vertebrae. That is why chastity is so important to advance in this path. When we already receive in the astral plane the silver sword, it can be said that we have already started the path. The 7th step will then be to make the 5 initiations of major mysteries, which is to start creating the existential bodies. To create a body, it is necessary to balance the 5 lower centers, as seen in Lesson 4. And with the energy saved in daily life through psychological death, and investing that energy and the sparks released, in sexual transmutation, we create each of the bodies. If a person works seriously, the creation of each body will take about 2.5 years. The creation of a body will imply completing an initiation. In the first initiation, the solar physical body will be completed. In the second initiation, the regeneration of the solar vital body. In the third initiation, the creation of the solar astral body. In the fourth, the creation of the solar mental body. And in the fifth initiation, the creation of the body of the solar will. Then, the 8th step will be taken during the creation of the 5th body. At that point, we will have to face the decision of the path to follow. If the direct path is chosen instead of the path of the nirvana, there, that saying that goes, out of 1,000 who follow me, one is mine, is fulfilled. Since out of 1,000 initiates who reach that point, 999 choose the path of nirvana, abandoning the esoteric path, and betraying their inner father. The direct path is the narrow and difficult path that leads to return to the bosom of our common cosmic Father. When the direct path is chosen, then the ninth and final step for the complete development of the soul is taken. And it is the celebration of the perfect matrimony, which is the union between the human soul, that consists of the first 5 bodies, with the divine soul, which are the 2 superior bodies. When we finish the 5th initiation, we become real men. A real man is one who has his 5 inferior bodies developed and in a solar state. Right now, we are nothing more than rational animals. At that moment, if we reach this point, it can already be said that we have a human soul. The creation of the 5 solar bodies is called the first mountain, or the ascent of fire for the first time from the coccyx to the pineal gland. It is also called the fabrication of the human soul or genesis. The first mountain can take approximately 13 years of work, depending on the person's level of work. With each completed initiation, the sword that we will have internally will grow. So, by looking at the growth of our sword in the astral plane, we can monitor the progress of the work we are doing. The length of the sword will be the measure of the fire in our spine. Each initiation begins and ends between 2 centers. Now that we already know the process for the soul's fabrication, let's talk about the spirit. Our spirit is formed by the upper parts of our consciousness. How is the spirit fabricated? When the 2 souls, the divine and the human, unite in the perfect matrimony, the second triad is formed, which is Atman, Buddhi, and Manas. Manas is the human soul. Buddhi is the divine soul. And Atman is the intimate. This triad is called the spirit. There we will have completed our first mountain, the mountain of Genesis. And we will start our second mountain, the mountain of the apocalypse, where the complete destruction of all our ego will take place through fire. The initiate, who has chosen the direct path, is given 1,000 years, with the same physical body to make the ascent of the second mountain, where the development of the spirit will take place. Anyways, the second mountain can be completed in 20 years by working diligently. On the second mountain, the 7 churches, and the 7 consciousness or 7 wisdoms, will fully develop, and we will achieve powers over the cosmos, and knowledges about the internal worlds of the planet, the solar system, and the galaxy. In the Phase B conferences, we will be delving into the work on the mountains of initiation. And this has been the topic of today. Remember to leave us any questions you have. I invite you to the next conference, where we will talk about the laws of return and recurrence. There we will be talking the difference between return and reincarnation, about past lives, and about the reason why déjà vu and premonitions occurs, and we will talk about our destiny, and how we can change it. Do not miss that interesting topic. Until next time.